Hello and welcome to Simon Says Artwork. In this video I am going to be using this Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen. I posted a video on Wednesday where I used this in my little black book, and today I'm going to be using it on a card. It's basically going to be like a greetings card, but I'm going to do a drawing of a piece of scrapyard material. It's basically the underside of a car that was stood up in a junkyard that I visited a week or so ago. So that's what I'm going to be working on this drawing now. So okay, let's get started. Now with this card I didn't really have any kind of guarantee that it would work out very well, so it was just hoping for the best to try and get the proportions right, and I knew I wouldn't fit in the whole object, so it was just trying to get enough details and different line weights. When I say line weights, in case you're not aware, it means that when you do a skinny line, like if you look at the downward line on the left, the one which is kind of on a bit of a diagonal, that's a really slim line, whereas the other lines are a lot heavier. They're a lot wider lines, so I try to keep a combination of both throughout this drawing, and I recommend you do the same if you're not familiar with the concept of line weight. Varying that up just makes a drawing really interesting, especially if you're not going to add shadow or any kind of, well, if you add colour it works, but if you're going to add shadow, whether it's hatching or coloured in shadow puddles, then it's still worth doing line weight difference. But if you're not going to have any of that, then you really need to vary the line weight. That's not actually true. You can do something where it's a solid line, but I think it's really interesting to see a drawing where some lines are skinny and some lines are really quite heavy. So that's what I'm doing. Now there's tons of different components and parts in this, and some of the proportions I get a little bit off, but a lot of it wasn't too far off. Now anyone who knows the mechanics of a vehicle like this will probably recognize where things are a little bit out, but to me it was more a case of, if I'm drawing from imagination and I want different parts and shapes intersecting with each other and, you know, overlapping in different places, then this is a real inspiration to have something so chaotic. And I'm really unfamiliar with this. I've never drawn anything like this before, and it was really fun because all of the different parts were kind of just complementary, because they obviously fit together for a practical reason. They're all functional, but for me it was just completely alien. So I really liked the idea of drawing these different shapes and then trying to find out the relation between that shape and other components in the underneath the vehicle. Now it was a long process. This video in reality, or I say this drawing, the original video was 52 minutes long, and I speed things up to a time lapse because I don't think that it'd be worth putting on the full length video for you. I don't know how interesting that would be for people, but this to me is watchable and entertaining for me, so I can imagine for people who don't know me it would be quite nice to see some of this line work and process, because the speed of the movement to me is just enough to make it right. I could be wrong, maybe you're bored to tears watching this now, but for me this is, what's going to go in next, and where's this going to fit, and what's important next. And bits like this are quite, I don't know, there's not very much in perspective. A lot of it's quite flat as well, which again, I have quite an interest in things which lie flat on a drawing. And not for all drawings, but if a drawing is going to have very little perspective on it, then it has quite an interesting kind of consistency and reality to it, which most drawings don't. Most drawings, certainly which I do, have perspective enforced on them. Whereas if something is quite straight on, then it won't have much of that dynamic happening. So there's not much foreshortening necessary or anything which needs to really skew at a different angle. But it was, a complicated, strange thing to draw. And because I didn't do any shadow, it doesn't look like very much depth. but at the same time I quite like all of the little shapes being justified by I suppose I feel like they're justified by the line itself, which may sound like a strange statement, but because I drew the line so confidently, I was happy with how it turned out because of how I feel as though it was rendered correctly for a representation of what I was assessing at the time. And that's what I quite like about drawings like this, is there's no or very little occasions where I would draw a line and then draw back over it again. And that's what I appreciate about drawing, is if you can commit to a line and just stick with it, the drawing is served much more it just looks stronger and more confident if you don't have to go back over a line again and again. Now when some lines look as though it's heavier, it's just because with this being a brush nib, if I press down too hard then it goes wider. Sometimes I do that on purpose and sometimes by accident, but I try to keep it relatively consistent so that there's only certain parts where there would be a wider line. And I quite liked trying to get some slimmer lines that were just a little bit wispy, and I think that was it adds a little bit to the drawing as well. But it's tricky because, as you can see from that section I've literally just drawn, which goes like an upside down L shape with the bars going across it, that's all quite heavy lines. So I'm conscious of that, and I try to do some wispy lines around it and try to compensate in different areas. Now I must admit, on this lower section it turns into more boxes than it is lots of complicated different intersecting details and pipes and angles like there is in the upper half. You can't tell yet, but when the drawing is finished I was surprised with how much it felt like the bottom or lower section that I'm drawing here looked as though it was lacking that level of complexity that I'd worked on at the top. And it wasn't for a lack of effort, it was just wasn't there. Sometimes I even added a couple of details which weren't in the original just because I thought it will look nicer having a few different angles here and there. But I don't know if you can see, it just looks a little bit more basic in the lower section. But that's the drawing done. Now I quite liked it, I really enjoy using this pen, and I quite like the drawing itself. Okay, so that's the drawing done. Now I kept it as a line drawing. I didn't want to add lots of hatching and shadow to this one because it's not very often that I just do line work, and I think it has quite a different character to the drawing, and I quite like that difference, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did enjoy it, then please leave a like. Comment down below if you can contribute and comment about anything that you should maybe like to see me draw, or what you appreciated about it, or maybe if you have a bit of a critique, take it easy on me, don't be too harsh, but I don't mind hearing any honest thoughts or feelings about it. And if you can subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it. It won't make a massive difference to you because I've done it to several channels to see what actually happens, and nothing really happens. You just get a little red dot when you're the person you subscribe to uploads a new video. But if you do subscribe, then I ask people to ring the notification bell, and that doesn't go off as a sound on your phone either. All that happens is that you get three options. It's either you have none for no notifications, personalized for specific, and that I've selected all for every channel that I've subscribed to, because I've rang the notification bell, pressed all, and you can just press on subscription, see what it is, and then if you don't want to watch it, go back to the home tab on your phone and then watch the videos that you want to select. But just in case you want to be notified of new uploads, and I'm going to start uploading some new content, some quite interesting things, so I'd really appreciate it. But if you can do that, then that would be great. But otherwise, just thank you for watching the video anyway. I'm glad if you did enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one.